One of the first things we learned in video was how to frame a headshot. And a headshot is usually head and shoulders. Like if you see an interview and they cut to the people being asked the questions, that's what you call a headshot. Now, that's a bad headshot right there. What I like to work in thirds. So you cut your screen up into thirds. I'm gonna want my eyes in the upper third. I've got way too much headroom and her eyes are in the half. If you're out shooting and your person's eyes are halfway up the screen, it's not a good frame. So what I do is, that's about thirds right there. Her eyes are just about a third on the screen. Headroom is perfect. So that's your typical head and shoulders. If you could do me a favor, turn and kind of look towards the door.
How do you tell how far to zoom in?
Well, I usually go, if you think they have a pocket on their shirt, I call it top of pocket. But if you've got a hand talker, like Laura, if I'm shooting something like a deposition and the witness is talking with their hands a lot or describing how big the thing was that fell on his foot and that's why he's being sued, pretend you're describing things with your hands. If they start doing things like that, you want to come out, the old head and shoulders goes away and you want to show, the zoom is way too fast for me. Do a little more of that. You want to be able to show what there's, but if you're just sitting there with your hands in your lap and just talking, go ahead, then you want to get back to the head and shoulders. And this isn't my camera, so I'm not really used to the zoom. If you're like that and they start doing that, you want to just slowly zoom out, talk with your hands again. You notice them doing that, you'd almost want to do a move that isn't even perceivable. And I've got this all tightened up too much too. So what you do is you end up very slowly zooming out, but, okay, talk with your hands again. But then you've got the frame you want. If you've got someone that's talking to someone else, now we get into what's called nose room. That's bad nose room right there. You see that? So what you want to do is, and most of the time you're not going to have such a profile, turn a little more towards me. If they're looking that way, or if you're shooting a meeting, you'll get people talking to someone next to them. Like someone asks them a question, then you might have a profile. You want, the thirds come into this a little again. When I first learned vertical thirds, we weren't widescreen yet. We were like it's called 4:3 ratio. Now we're 16:9. So when I first learned vertical thirds, this was the screen, and you would put that person in the right-hand third. With widescreen, the right-hand third is way over too much. See, so you got to adjust a little bit, and so I tweak it so, the front of their face is about halfway. And if they're a hand talker, you got to come out again. So the other thing, okay, come back towards me. I talked about headroom before. You also have what we call apple on a table. That is bad. A quick way to correct that is eyes want to be a third of the way up the screen. And that, I'm going to come out a little bit. That almost got me pretty good headroom. It's probably a little more headroom than I want. The other thing you're going to find if you're doing interviews, people change position as the interview goes on. They'll slouch. So, yeah, see how, depending on the subject matter, they're either really psyched or just, oh man, I don't want to talk about this. So you kind of have to adjust for that too. A lot of our producers produce meetings, and you might have, say there's a board here, and this person's talking, and what I see a lot of, and we try to help our producers, is too much of this. Oh, this guy's talking, I better go over here. Oh, she said something, I'm coming over here. Things like that. What you want to do is, when I shoot a meeting, I'm under contract with the state to shoot the State Board of Education. It's a big board, there's like 11 people. So I never have closer than like a 4 or 5 shot. They're at a table, so this is kind of more of a group. So that way, if someone's talking, I can just say someone asked Missy a question over here. I can just kind of slowly go over and bring them into the frame. Say it's Danielle with the cute baby. And so if I was tight on her, she's talking, someone asks her a question, this doesn't look good. Where's the guy answering the question? So if you're doing meetings, you don't want to go closer than like a 5 or a 4 shot. Once in a while, if you've got an agenda and you see someone's about to give a committee report and they're going to talk for a while, I would still only, say Daniel's giving a report, don't go all the way into him. It's just, even if you got the other person sitting there, checking their phone, there's really no need in a group to be all the way in. And the other thing we always put a graphic about what the meeting is, and I do that with my things too. I always leave a little bit of room on the bottom. I mean, if I was shooting something and it wasn't going to, I'd be about there if I wasn't going to put a graphic on it. But if I'm putting a graphic on it, I'm going to tilt down just a little bit because this whole section might be what the meeting that you're looking at, the graphic. There it is. And that's not Paula. Thanks, Daniel. So now I'm already, even though I put my graphics on post after I shoot the meeting, and that happens here too, so you don't see that while you're shooting it, but I've left room for that. If I did my normal, that's probably about a normal, now pop it up again, Daniel. It doesn't look right to me. I'm chopping Missy off too much, and I've got too much headroom. So I kind of envision where that graphic's going to go. And I've almost got the thirds going here. The people are in the upper third. Do you see that? And the graphic's in the lower third. The middle third is just, extraneous, her bracelets. So that's how I usually shoot meetings. I don't know if anybody's shooting sports in here. But if you're just watching a game at home, you don't know what the score is. So what I do when I'm shooting a game is when there's a break or if there's a timeout, I'll go up and do it, shoot the scoreboard. Because it's telling the story as if you're sitting there and you're a fan in the audience. You want to know what the score is. Another way to do that is let's talk about in-camera editing a little bit. If you're not going to do too much post-editing and you want to do what's called in-camera editing, you're on record and they take a timeout. And you don't want to have to go find the scoreboard and you're not going to edit later. You hold that shot, you hit pause, you frame the scoreboard, record the scoreboard. I go for at least 5 seconds on the scoreboard, stop it again, reframe your shot. They come out of timeout, you hit record again, and you've just edited in the camera, as we call it. You don't have to do it later. When I first started, the in the camera edits were very noisy. You actually see some noise because we won't say how old I am, but it was, some of it was VHS back then. Nowadays it's all digital, so there's real clean cuts. In-camera editing is real good right now. The other thing, if you're doing in-camera editing, you don't want a jump cut. Say I've got a close-up of Daniel. He's doing something, and I know my next shot is going to be someone else talking. If I pause on that, I don't want my next shot to be so similar that it looks like he just turned into her. So if I cut from this, and I cut to that, it's what I call a jump cut. He's just going to turn into you. So the way to get around that is, if you think you're going to have a close-up, you're going to cut in a close-up, zoom is way too fast for me, but come out to a two-shot before you're going to do that next shot. And then you can hit pause and then do that. The other thing is if you're not doing in-camera editing and you just want to make a move and get someone else, it's always easier and smoother rather than just pan over. See how that kind of looks like the train going by? It's easier to pan, it's smoother to pan, pardon my zooms, to come out to like a 4 or 5 shot. Even while you're zooming out, you can pan over.
What does that mean, a 4 or 5 shot?
When I say 2 shot, 3 shot, that's how many people are in the shot.
Oh.
That's a 2 shot. And that's a 5 shot. Oh, 6, sorry. But did you see what I did? If I'm shooting and I'm not going to edit this, and a lot of our stuff is just right out of the can, shot. And I want to go back, I want to zoom into someone over here. I'm going to do a slow move so you're not getting the train going by look. And then say the little guy's talking, I settle on that a little bit and then I'll go back in. And I've got him talking. Rather than oh, he's talking, let's do that. Oh, there it is. So you see how that's smoother? And a lot of times at meetings, people are all over the place. And Dan and I talked about this. You've got conversation going back and forth between people at a board meeting, and you know that each person is only saying a sentence. You don't have to keep going. You don't have to do the tennis match, the ping pong match. If you know whatever that guy's saying over there is going to come back to Missy anyway, don't even go over there. If he starts if he's got a report and he's got 3 pages, go get him. But if Missy's making a point and he's just saying, well, what about the culvert under the bridge? She's just going to answer that question. You know, by the time he says bridge, she's already answering the question. And that's just a matter of, a lot of our producers record the same meetings, so they kind of know who the talkers are. You've run into that too. You know, the chair is always good. The chair of the meeting is always going to talk more. And, you know, you get the road commissioner is going to have a long report and things like that.